And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is a little bit different, a little bit interesting, is a guy named Mark Kenney. So, Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Peter. I appreciate it.
Great. So let me give you a sense of what Mark is. So Mark is a seasoned real estate investor. He's an entrepreneur, and he's a founder of Think Multifamily, which is what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. But he's been in the real estate business for over 20 years. He has a top-notch reputation among multifamily investment community. A graduate of 1993, graduate of Michigan State University, an accounting degree, all kinds of fun stuff there. What we really want to talk about, Mark, is as a real estate professional, that's outside of the realm of what we typically deal with here. But how did you sort of blend being a real estate professional and successful in that world and launch Think Multifamily, which is ultimately a content-based business? So tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, great question. So I've been buying real estate for a long time, and there are a lot of people out there that teach people how to buy real estate, and none of us have invented buying apartment buildings, but we found in the marketplace, or we thought we originally found in the marketplace, that people were looking for someone that doesn't just sit there and tell them everything's hunky dory all the time, nothing ever goes wrong. Because if something goes wrong, then you think something's wrong with you, right? So it's so we're like, man, there's too many people out there that are, in our opinion, not given the full story about multifamily investing and things that could happen, or share horror stories, whether they're too prideful or just they're trying to build a business and act like everything's hunky dory. So we said, well, we talked to some people. They said, yeah, we're looking for something a little bit different than what we've seen out there in the past. So we started Think Multifamily with, yes, to help educate people how to invest in multifamily and buy their own deals, but also to kind of have a community that was really driven more by my wife, Tamil, and have more of a family type atmosphere where people would want to stay there, regardless of whether they had all the knowledge already. They want to stay there and have fun and hang out and do life together.
Very cool.
So we started doing webinars initially, and people were like, well, what are you doing next? We're like, that's it. We did our webinar. And so we said, okay, we'll start a meetup. And then people asked what we're doing next. We started doing like a 1-day event. Now we have multiple events a year. We do typically at least 6 events a year. And it just kind of morphed into this, I guess, business, if you want to say. One, that both my wife and I fell in love with, the education piece. And two, it allowed us to do business together full time, which was different before. I mean, before I was doing IT consulting, CPA, and things like that, and my wife didn't have anything really to do with that. So it really helped us bond a lot closer together, which is what we needed at the time.
Great. How did you discover that there's a need for this, right? Because ultimately, you're now in the business of selling educational based content to a targeted audience that teaches them how to be better at being investors and finding properties and such in the multifamily space. How do you go from being really good at it as an investor to developing processes and methodologies that are teachable? Tell me about that, because that's not a bridge that everybody can cross, being really good at something to being able to teach others how to do something.
I had my own IT business in 2008 that I had for a number of years. And, I was kind of used to going into Fortune 100 companies and helping them with their processes and, building those out and trying to make them more efficient and things like that. But that's just a piece of paper, right? Or a video. But now to say, okay, well, how do you actually teach somebody this? And what I sat there going to myself and, my wife Tamil as well, saying, man, why didn't anyone tell us all these things when we started doing larger multifamily? We were involved in a group that we paid pretty good money to be involved in. And I was sitting there scratching my head going, you know, neither, the guy must have known what needed to be done, but he certainly didn't share what needed to be done, didn't share all the things it really takes to go through the process. So for me, I said, well, content wise, pretty easy, because it took a lot of hours, like hundreds and hundreds of hours put together, but that's pretty easy. I already have that in my head. But then how do you teach somebody that? And for us, it really became, okay, well, just be transparent with people. Tell them the whole story and tell them, share your horror stories, the mistakes you've made. They're going to learn more from that than anything else. And that's kind of where we just started. People like, man, you guys share pretty deep things, right? And it turned out even more to be not just business, which is really cool. We're I'm not, not trying to be whatever. People like having problems with a marriage, for example, and that's not that's not my specialty, but I've had problems with my marriage before,
Sure.
and so we can share those things as well. But the teaching piece, I think it's really is really being given the whole picture and all the hair that goes along with it and things to avoid and being, like I said, just transparent, and then bringing other people in. If you want to, I can talk to pretty much every area of multifamily, and I know the financing, for example, very very well, and it's complicated. But I also bring people in that've been doing it for 25 years, and some people that we know in the industry want all the limelight on them. That's fine. That's their prerogative. They want to do that, but we don't have problems bringing in experts in certain areas and giving them the stage to teach people, and people learn by doing that. And now we're involving our kids in it as much as we can. They're 13 and 10,
Great.
so it's been cool.
Cool. So you've got this expertise. You had a sense that people weren't getting the whole picture, right? They're getting the good, but maybe not the bad and the ugly, and you need all of it if you're going to be in any business, right? So you
Right.
sort of had an intuition like there's a piece of this missing. How did you decide on the niches or the subsets of the market that you'd go after? Because you've got limited resources, nobody's got unlimited time or money or whatever. How did you start the process of determining these are the types of folks that could benefit from this? And then number two, how do you find them in a cost effective way?
Yeah, so we had already been investing for a number of years, so we had an okay size, a list, not nearly as big as we do now, but we had an okay list, and we met with certain people saying, well, if we had a group, what would you be looking for? And I think that's one of the keys is never be so prideful if you want to say that you think you know it all. You need to listen to other people, and we've been able to adapt really well by listening to other people and changing things to be better and better. But we had a good sense what people, we were involved in a group as well, so we knew what people didn't like about that group and some things they did like about the group.
Well, I'm trying to understand what specifically the types of people were they, real estate
Oh, good question.
professionals? Were they like what's the profile of the folks that you thought could benefit the most from your information?
Yeah, two types of people. One would be someone that's has some money they want to invest, and all they've really known before is investing in either small single family type units or stock market, and they don't even realize that they can invest in a larger apartment building.
Okay,
And some of that came through just people we knew, but also, kind of get your point too. We started putting ourselves out there a little bit more. And it's a little bit awkward at first when you're doing that. You're on social media and,
sure.
you're maybe doing live, videos and things like that. But you get over that. And then the other group of people were just like I was. I mean, 100% to a T, where I was making really good money, IT business. I worked minimum 80 hours a week, no joke, slept about 3 hours a night. That's probably extreme for a lot of other people, but people may be working 60 hours a week and going, man, this is my life. I mean, I don't want to keep doing this. So I started,
It's a grind. I'm tired. It's not sustainable. All
right,
that fun
right.
stuff.
And it becomes your new norm, which is not a good norm to have. And, so we started reaching out to people that are more professionals. A lot of people in our group right now are professional engineer type mindset, which surprised me a little bit because usually engineers overanalyze everything, and I have an analytical background too. But we've been surprised at the number of people that are engineers that just kind of gravitate to us, or IT professionals and things like that. But it's you have to get out there. I mean, people like, well, how do you build your list? How do you build your group? Well, we're at meetups. We go to events. We do our own meetups. We sponsor usually 5 or 6 events of other people's events each year. But it's a little hard. And what we also did is after people joined our group, and we formally sent out a request or a list of questions. And one of the questions like, well, why did you join a group? What was the reason? What drove you to do that? And we also asked questions their age, if they wanted to answer it, in the profession. And we started kind of formulating it down, going, this is our avatar, if you want to say, is really someone, if they're doing it on their own, it's usually in the 30s or 40s for the most part, professional engineer or whatever it may be, or a doctor, and just kept refining that over and over again.
Got it. So part of what you're offering them is also a sense of community, right? Because there's different tribes and different communities for different folks, but the common denominator here is, they're all multifamily investors, so they've got some, war stories they can tell, et cetera. Yet they're not necessarily competitive. It's not sort of that cutthroat, If I'm a multifamily investor in Cleveland, it's fine for me to meet up with someone from Phoenix because we could actually help one another. It's not a Coke and Pepsi,
Right.
bake off, if you will. Give me a sense. You talked a little bit earlier around the product line that you started with a webinar and built up, and now you've got all these multi-day events. Interesting to me, some people, and I've seen them get rich and go broke diving into the event space really, really quickly, right? So when it works well, it works really well.
Yeah.
And if it rains or it's a political election that night, or your favorite ball teams, there's lots of reasons it can go bad. So give me a sense of sort of going from sort of low risk webinar to a little bit higher risk event based programs, because those are not easy events to run profitably.
They're not easy, and it's scary at first because you're spending. People don't realize in some cases you're spending literally tens of thousands of dollars to put an event on, and people don't realize that. But for us, we said, well, you know what? Even not that we wanted to, even if we make no money off the event, we didn't make money off our first several events. We didn't have a program that we pitched. It was strictly educational. It was like $97 or something like that, pretty cheap for 2 days. So you don't make money off that. But for us, we said, well, if nothing else comes out of these events other than our investor pool getting more educated, then it's still worth it to us. It does save us time in the long run having more educated investors. But getting people at an event is challenging, and people will do things like our meetups, for example, are free, and we'll have 50% of the people that RSVP show up to the meetup. Our events we do that are 2 days, we probably have 90 some percent that show up. We charge, it's not a lot of money, but we do charge something so people have some sort of
Sure.
skin in it, if you want to say. Fortunately for me, my wife had some experience with doing that in the background as far as setting up events. She was on a ministry board for 13, 14 years and had set up silent auctions and different events. If it was left to me, it probably would not have gone nearly as well. It would not have gone nearly as well, but I had that as well. I tell people, you come to my event that I put on, you probably wouldn't have food, water, or maybe you're not even sure. I don't I don't know, but she's good at that. My
Well, the
wife is.
details and the logistics are not fun, right? So, or I guess
They're
they're fun for some
crazy.
people. Find those people and partner with them, or in your case,
No, it's crazy, but it's hard. Each event we try to do them, bring something different each time, so people are getting different exposure to different things. And but no, there's no question it's hard, and I think you really have to have, if you're going to try one, and you really find out, hey, you just don't like it or whatever. It's too much work, effort, money, energy to do events if you don't like it. Every event we do beforehand, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, what are we doing? And then we do them, we're like, man, I love it. It was great,
right, right, right.
So you have to love to
It's
do
like
it.
like getting prepared to run a marathon or something.
Exactly.
So let me ask you for some words of wisdom. So right now, there's probably some folks out there that have domain expertise in a different space, not multifamily, but whatever their expertise is. What would you tell them the things that they should start to think about or do if they're thinking like, oh, people are telling them that you should teach this or turn this into something? What are the things that they should be looking out for, and good, bad, and ugly?
Yeah, I would say always start small.
So that's sort of a risk management angle.
Right. If it doesn't work, if something small doesn't work, then don't do something big. And then also, start with, if you want to call it, your warm audience. And I don't know if you know Kyle Wilson is, but he's mentored us in the past, and he's a fantastic guy. But he would be like, okay, you want to start small, test it with your warm audience. If it doesn't work with them, you're not going to get a cold audience to come in if your warm audience isn't biting on it, right?
And how do you define warm audience? People that are already in your network, your relationships, people that you already know, right? So if the people already know you and you have a rapport with, if it doesn't resonate with them, your point is, oh, you ain't gonna get a stranger to
That's
like it,
exactly
right?
right. You may get one or two here and there. You're not going to get enough.
Not enough to
But
build a
yeah, and you
business.
want to be talking to if they're starting out new and you say, hey, I'm going to, whatever, I'm going to do an online course, I'm going to do this. Solicit feedback from other people, and, put a questionnaire out there. Say, hey, what are your top 10 questions or 5 questions around whatever your area you're looking at, and then start doing modules and put a presentation together around those common themes. You're going to see, you might need 100 different things, but they all boil down to 5 to 10 things essentially.
Right, and then you work with the market based on what they're telling you. Great. And what about things to look out for? So those are things to look for. What are the things to be weary of?
I don't, I say this just in tongue in cheek a little bit, but be very slow to trust people. if you have something and it's unfortunate, but you have something and you put effort into, or you put time, you're building something, be careful who you share it with initially. And, if you're becoming successful, I'm convinced of this, the more successful you become, the more people you have gunning after you for whatever reason that is. So be prepared that people might try to, hinder you more than they're going to help you in some cases. So look out for people that aren't supportive of you and don't, just move on, right? Don't, if people are kind of dogging you, like, what are you doing? What makes you think you're so great? You can do this. You're listening to the wrong person. So don't listen to the wrong people is really one of the key things on that.
So good stuff. So listen to the market. Start small because it's better to fail small than fail big. Really good information there, Mark. How do people get in touch with you as we start to wind down here? How do people find you? How do they get in touch with you? If they're thinking about learning about multifamily, how do they do any of that stuff?
Yeah. So our website is thinkmultifamily.com, and my email address is Mark, which is MARK at thinkmultifamily.com. We have events, we have meetups, but reach out to us on either of those two, website or directly through email, and we'd be happy to chat with people. We're all about trying to help people. People can decide that maybe this isn't for them, and that's good to know too.
Sure. Well, thanks so much. Lots of information today. A little bit of a different twist in terms of the expertise and the niche on the content, but I think it was an interesting conversation to have nonetheless. So thank you for coming on today, Mark, sharing your experiences with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.